Welcome to The Howl, where GPAC's team of passionate people share 30 years of experience in the recruiting biz, with front row seats to hundreds of different industries. I'm your host, Luke Linus, and I'll be sitting down in the GPAC studio with recruiters, coaches, and industry leaders to talk shop on modern work culture, job hunting tips, elevating your recruiting game, and insight into trends and hiring for companies of all sizes. Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I'm excited for today's episode. What I think is so fascinating about the career of recruiting is that recruiters get this really cool opportunity to be at the intersection of all the hiring that goes on in companies. So they're really at this crossroads between a candidate, someone who's in the workforce or going to be in the workforce looking for a job, and a company that's needing to hire or needing to grow. And recruiters have this amazing opportunity to sit at the crossroads of that. And I'm excited today to kind of lean more one direction and talk a little bit about the candidate's experience or what people in the workplace are experiencing as they're considering a job change or a career change. And so I'm excited today to have Samantha Solomon, an expert recruiter at GPAC, here in the studio with me today. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I don't know about expert, but experience for a few years.
Experienced, yes. It has a little bit of expert in it. Either way, you've been recruiting for a while. You're doing a great job. From what conversations I've had with you, you really do care about what you do, and it comes through in the client relationships that you have. So
I absolutely love what I do. You had mentioned, when what we're doing, recruiting. You are working with companies and candidates that have experience and that have no experience. So as you had mentioned, all facets of that hiring process. And it's pretty incredible because you do talk to candidates that have never worked with a recruiter before or have never had a full-time job before. And you've talked to candidates that are used to getting the 20, 30 calls every week from recruiters. And then you also get it on the flip side. You know, I talked to companies. I talked to a company this week that had no idea how the process worked, and it's so much fun because it's just you get to tell them everything versus any preconceived notions that they might have or a bad experience. But almost everybody's familiar with the process, so it's pretty cool on both sides, candidate and company side. You have recruiters that have talked to experienced and inexperienced on both sides of it. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Just totally brand new to some and totally like, okay, yeah, I've done this before. Here's my script. I'm going to send you an email here. It answers all the questions. To somebody that's like, I don't know, can I call you guys a headhunter?
Sure.
Is that rude to say? Like, I don't care what you call me. Just call me.
Right. Just call me.
Just call me.
Quote of the day.
Yeah.
Just call me.
Yeah.
Okay, so let everybody know a little bit about your story. So I know that you're in construction. You've been in construction for couple years?
So I've been a recruiter for about 3.5 years with GPAC and started out in construction by not intentionally. I did work for a construction, home improvement company, Home Depot for about 16 years. So
16 years.
I thought that would be relevant.
Time.
It wasn't relevant. I have never talked to anybody about 2x4s or blinds or carpet in any day of my life at GPAC. But still in that construction world, turns out I love anything, improvement or building or construction. So, it kind of makes sense. But yes, in construction, I've dabbled in a couple other fields that I have no idea what I'm doing in, from accounting positions to working with some foreign trust companies. So yes, the majority of what I do is in the construction world.
Awesome. What's something about construction that is really interesting to you? Now that I know that you were in Home Depot world, which is a totally different world. It's on the consumer side of that. Now you've been a recruiter for almost 3 years. What's something about the industry that you're in that is really fascinating to you, or that you really enjoy about the people you work with?
So I think there's almost something every week that I find interesting about the industry. Last year I was talking with a gentleman that was so when it comes to, creating a building, they use some newer technology, and for some they've been doing it for 10, 15 years, but some companies it's brand new. But building information modeling, so BIM, construction, or there's a bunch of different terms, but it's technology that they're using to make it easier to build.
Yep.
And I was talking to this candidate because it was a position I had never worked on before. So, you get a chance to just totally pick their brain and figure out what the heck they're talking about and learn all these terms that the hiring authority might be telling you that you need to know what you're talking about other than just tossing out a term. But it was, this gentleman was telling me exactly why it's important. It's saying like, oh, the way we used to do things, here's what an inspection used to be, or here's how you would start the process of building. It's like with this new technology, you can do it virtually. You can do it just from having this software and how everything is shifting towards this BIM modeling or this BIM technology and all the different software that goes along with it. But it's just so interesting that I get to talk to candidates that are on the edge of all of these new building technologies or these methods. And I'm talking to people that are helping actually build hospitals. Like right now, and especially through this last year during COVID, talking to people about all of the changes with construction around COVID. So when you're building a hospital, you have people in the hospital, they're sick, and they're trying to do a renovation or complete a renovation on a hospital. And it's all these challenges with negative airspace and clean rooms and all the extra, the vestibules that they're creating that have to be safe for these people that are walking in and out of the building, taking care of these people every day. So it's just really interesting being a part of even something so relevant as how construction is being changed by COVID this past year.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So I invite you today too, as we're having this conversation, like, your industry. I don't ask you to speak about other industries that you're not aware of, but I think because I know you to be a fairly relationally invested person, meaning that you really do care about people. It's one of those reasons why I wanted to have this conversation because whether it's dealing directly with the construction industry or not, there's a lot of people either entering into that industry who are in that industry that may or may not be considering a career change. And as things evolve and as new industry or like sub industries pop up, that means there's new potential jobs within that industry where people might consider moving for a new position or advancing in their career in some way. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. One thing that I'm aware of within the recruiting world is this kind of conversation between active candidates and passive candidates. So can you explain to people who may not know what those terms mean? Like, what is an active versus a passive candidate?
Sure. I think something that we often, it's misleading to say that there's just active and or passive candidates and active candidates, but there's also a lot of space in between too. So there's a lot of gray area. So, for example, backing up. So if you have somebody that's active, they're probably going to be actively doing things to change their position within their company. If it's a promotion or maybe it's trying to find a different job, but they're actively doing things to make that change.
Yep.
Then there's passive candidates
so that'd be like somebody, like you could go look up their resume on Indeed or
not
something
necessarily.
Like that.
You might have somebody that is starting to view positions or are applying to positions, but they don't have their resume on Indeed or where somebody would be able to access it. So somebody that's taking those steps already, and that might even be finally answering messages that they've received on LinkedIn or emails that they've gotten, or contacting a recruiter from a buddy that said, oh yeah, hey, I know that the other day you were complaining about so-and-so. Here's somebody that gave me this phone number for a recruiter. But it's somebody that's making those steps. Yep. So that would be, I would say, that's a general term. There are people that are on the absolutely active side that you talk to them and they're into, or they're talking about 20 different companies that they're interested in getting in front of. That's on the very extreme side. But I talked to a candidate probably about 3 months ago that had a list of over 50 companies that he had already applied to by the time I had talked to him. So we have situations where somebody's doing an apply all option online. And I think you can apply to up to 100 jobs that have certain titles or requirements in a search, and then it will automatically apply to a position for you. So that is a way to get out there. It's a way to get out, put your nets out in as many places as possible. especially if somebody's going to be moving, if they're relocating, they don't know an industry, they don't have those connections, or if somebody is switching into another industry.
Yep.
They want to get all their nets out there, or maybe even somebody that's freshly graduating. They
Sure.
have no idea where to start. So that would be an extremely active
Yep.
candidate. They're making lots of moves to make their situation change.
Yep.
And then we have passive.
Yep.
I would like to say that those are the ones that I work with the most, or
Okay.
we end up working with the most. Different industries, it'll be, it's very different in different markets and different times of the year, but mostly passive candidates, somewhere in between the active and passive candidate. So a passive would be somebody that is typically employed or happy with their current situation, good with where things are at, but there are some rubs. So
Sure.
there's something going on at their current job, and that could be no fault of the company. Nothing that the company is actually doing wrong, or
Sure.
that they can fix.
Just unhappy about something. Yep.
Unhappy about something. It could
Yep.
be, a lot of times we talk to a lot of folks that are in a position that has no other growth. Like they can't possibly move up
Like
with
they
the
topped
company
out. Yeah.
at all.
Yep.
It might be that they don't have other locations that they can transfer into, or it might be that it's a family-owned company and their last name's not Sampson, so they're never going to be a president.
Sure.
So, there's no promotion
Yeah.
there. They're at the end. So
Yeah.
that's nothing that the company can do. I mean, they can try to sweeten the pot and make it great while
Yeah.
they're there, but if they want to grow and they want to be a president, or if they want to be an owner, there's nothing the company can do. Or another reason we talk to candidates, one of the biggest reasons outside of promotion, I would say, would be location.
Sure.
So I want to move back home, or I want to be closer where I can do outdoor activities, or we want to be close to an airport, or my family is my parents are getting older and we want to be able to go home and take care of them. So location's another really big reason that somebody would be happy or passive at
Sure.
their current job.
So they like
but
their job,
they
but
love
in
their
the back
job.
of their mind, they're like, "Oh, I would love if I could do this job in
somewhere else."
blank."
Yep.
Yep.
But we do have passive candidates that are maybe slightly unhappy, or they know that things are probably not perfect where
Yep.
they're at. That could be, I always get a call from my boss on Saturdays to work 2 or 3 hours. It's not really that big a deal, but, family time's really important.
Yep.
We just had a kid, and, it's starting to cut into family time. So it could be something small like work-life balance.
Yep.
Could be, of course, compensation always comes into the mix. People often think that's what headhunters do, or a recruiter does, is that we're always just chasing, helping candidates find more money or get more money
sure.
for them.
Yep.
Or the very first question most often when you ask somebody like, "Oh, what could be better about your current job?" "Oh, well, of course, money.
money.
Ha, ha, ha." Like, well,
Sure.
I mean, everybody, I would love more money.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, just
Yep.
give me some more money. I mean,
Right.
who's going to turn that down? But most of the time, it's really, truly not a driver
Sure.
of why
Interesting.
people are making a change.
Yep.
I mean, if it really comes down to it, a lot of people might say it like, "Well, I'd love to make more money," but they say that, and truly it's because, 3 years in a row, they've been told that they'll get this promotion and it hasn't happened, or they don't get the reviews that they are promised
Yep.
every single year, or the company doesn't even have any formal evaluation process, and they're feeling a little looked over. They don't really have a formal set time to talk with their boss about things that they want to be different.
Yep.
So it's money is misleading, I think, in my experience, as a driver for why people truly make a change.
Huh. So money aside, like in both camps, there could be a plethora of reasons for the desire to make a change. I mean, you said everything from advancement to a location move to I'm just simply not happy with X, Y, or Z, topping out in an organization. You said you tend to work with, or as a recruiter, you tend to see or work with more passive candidates. Is there a reason for that?
Well, the passive candidates, I would say, are a bit more flexible. It's mostly because of timeline. So there are situations where we have companies, and again, the time of year might make a difference.
Sure.
So To toss it back a little bit to the industry that I work. So somebody that is a superintendent, they are on the project. Say we're putting up a school. This is the person, not a superintendent of a school, but they're on a project doing the construction.
Yeah.
They are out on the job site. They're making sure the walls are going up properly, or that, the plumbing and the piping and all of that's done how it should be. So that superintendent in South Dakota can't work all year long.
Right.
So we have seasons that some positions are more
like time sensitive.
Sure. And there's going to be, where we're going to have to move really fast for somebody to find somebody, because that window in a lot of places that are affected by, most have some sort of window because of the weather. It's faster, and we have to move really quick. Otherwise, they're going to find somebody else, and it's too late. Or they'll have to shift other people around, and everybody else is picking up the weight, so they don't have to hire somebody, or if they can't find somebody.
Yep.
So some positions are affected by that quicker timeline. In some industries, it might be where a turnaround time from when somebody is looking to when they're hired might be a week or two.
Sure.
In construction, it can be a week. This past week, I had a gentleman on a Monday get his interview, or have an interview or resume submitted on a Monday, and he was hired by Friday.
Oh,
that doesn't happen very often. I mean, it's not all the time. I mean, I had another candidate that was in process for 3 months. So there are time sensitive ones, or reasons that we have to react quicker for some positions, but the passive candidates, the likelihood that your ideal job or whatever is needing to be fixed by your current situation is going to be in the exact location with the exact pay and the right title and everything for it to line up. It's unlikely that it's going to be that there are 10 places out there right now.
It's a little harder to find.
It's it's a little bit easier when somebody's passive, because then we can, hey, heads up, something came up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Like, why?
3 months from now or something.
3 months from now, I talked to a company, and they have a project kicking off, and we know that in July they're going to need 2 or 3 people. So
it's less the urgent market of not urgent. It's all urgent in a company's mind, but like more time urgent needs versus the kind of like, hey, as a company, we're growing and we're anticipating we're going to need a project manager in this period of time.
And sometimes they have said construction worker, the superintendent, walk off the job, and guess what? It's incredibly urgent.
Yeah.
Urgency, I think, is relative.
Sure.
And because we're in this industry, I mean, things change so quick. I mean, it can be that a company is searching for 2 months, and then they have, their brother's son walk in the door and they hire him, and then you've been working on it for 2 months, and they things change overnight.
Yep.
And I've had that happen where people, like you talk to them over the weekend, they're like, yeah, I end up having coffee with this so-and-so, and I met him years ago, and turns out he's looking, and he starts on Monday. Like, oh, okay. That changed fast. So yes, it's very, very urgent, but urgency is relative. You talk to a company and they're like, we need this person ASAP, and you peel back the layers, and their ASAP is 3 months from now.
Sure.
Because in terms of a year, that's like right now when you dial it down to how long the onboarding process takes. So it's incredibly urgent, but what urgent is to each person in each company in each situation changes.
Yep. Let's talk about active first. Just after comparing the two, I'm curious, like with active job seekers, so those are the people that they've made some step toward, okay, I'm unhappy, I'm going to make a change, I'm headed in that direction. That could have been a conversation with a friend, that could have been throwing their resume up online, that could have been a lot of things. You said remind me again, the things that typically are motivating active job seekers are general, I'm unhappy, or I want a career change, I want to make a move.
For some more, I would say, common reasons that active job seekers are looking, or often they currently don't have work.
Sure.
So that's pretty common. If we are to the point where they have submitted their resume out to 10, 15, 20 different places, it's pretty likely that they don't have a job lined up for either next week or next month, or it could be that they were laid off a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So they are likely, a change is that they don't have a job right now, or it could be, Could be location, could be compensation, could be growth, and same reasons why a passive candidate would be looking, but they are just a little bit more active.
How do you know that those people are truly ready to make a change?
So that is, and I feel like that applies for both sides.
Okay.
For company and candidates, the how urgent somebody is in a hiring situation or how urgent a candidate is to be hired. It applies to both, but again, urgency to one might not be urgent to another.
Sure.
But there are things that I have learned to not.
That's why you're here. I want to know what they are.
That you can't just take things at face value. So if somebody tells you, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make a change right now," there are lots of questions that we ask to find out really what's going on. So,
and I'm not trying to be critical of people because I've been in this position before. But what typically is that? That is it just kind of like that? Get excited about the chance of a new opportunity, and maybe I assume that I'm more ready than I am to make a change.
Very, very much so. In
Sure.
some of the cases. So I keep this in mind every time I talk to, if it's a company or a candidate. The reason that they are saying the things they are, or the reason they feel the way they do, is because of all these other situations we might not know about.
Yep.
The reason I say that is you might talk to a company that's like, "Oh, I've had a poor experience working," or they're maybe a little bit more black and white or short with you on the phone. Well, it's probably because they had a bad experience.
Yep.
And same thing goes with a candidate. So they could have had a really poor experience with a recruiter before. So you get to have this wonderful person that might be short with you because they've been lied to before, or they've been told one thing and this happens, or they had a bad experience. So I never fault a company or a candidate for how they feel the process should go, or what the next step should be, or what they're supposed to say.
Yep.
So I keep this in mind whenever I sometimes maybe get confused or frustrated about a situation, like the company or the candidate saying one thing and they're doing another. I keep this in mind. When I was at Home Depot for, at the time, it was over 15 years. And I mean, even in between 10 and 15 years, multiple times, like, gosh, should I be doing this? Like, what am I doing? Why am I working nights and weekends?
Yeah.
And I thought that I wanted to make a change multiple times, and including I came into GPAC about 5 years before I started at GPAC.
Really?
And I thought that I was ready at that time. And then when it got real, it was just like, I'm not ready. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I remember what it was like getting those calls from the recruiter the first time when I wasn't ready, getting the calls of, "Hey, I'm calling from so-and-so. There's a company in the area looking for somebody like you." And it's super flattering to hear that somebody else wants you.
They would be looking for you, yeah.
Even if you're not looking, it's nice to know that somebody wants you or is interested in you. So there's a part of it is like, it feels good to be wanted. So I get that sometimes we talk to candidates that are maybe feeling unappreciated where they're at, and they just like to know that they have other options.
Yep.
So I think that's a part of it sometimes. But I remember getting those phone calls and I wasn't ready at the time. And this is one of the indicators of urgency or how serious somebody is how willing they are to make time to speak with you.
Oh, interesting.
So if you are getting a phone call when you're at work out of the blue, which is often what we do, you're getting a message or a phone call in the, a cold call, or, you've never talked to this person before and they're calling you saying, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, a company likes you." If you don't have time, or you can't make time in the next day or two, it's like, well, maybe next week, or, like, call me on Saturday, or
it's kind of
like
just
maybe in a
punt,
couple
like,
weeks, give me a
off.
call. Like, it's not that they wouldn't be interested in having that conversation, or that it couldn't go somewhere, but more than likely, if somebody's truly ready, they're going to make time. Like, hey, I can make time on my lunch today, or I can find time 15, 20 minutes in the afternoon, like on a break, I can make time to talk. So
it's a casual or an intentional move. Like, hey, I really would like to see what this person has to say.
Yeah, I mean, without even realizing that they are doing it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to shove them off until next Saturday and make them work on a weekend, and then that's a power move. It's truly that they're like, okay, I want to know more. Things are maybe not good where I'm at right now, and I want to make a change. And the reason I brought up that situation at Home Depot is I remember getting that phone call when I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And like, oh, well, call me after work. Like, I'm at work right now. Like, what are you doing? Like, oh my gosh, this is
Yeah.
crazy. Like, whoa, what if I get caught? Like, whoa. And then, years later when I needed that phone call and I was ready, and it was, okay, can you call me at 2? Or I take my lunch around so-and-so. Yeah. Tell me more. Here's my cell phone number. Here's my email address. Yeah. Give me more information. I need to take this to the next step. So, and you will have passive candidates that don't have time to talk to you that really do want to make a move. And they are ready to make that change, but you're calling them at work oftentimes.
Yeah, you don't know what their life is like. Yeah. Yep.
In especially we see it in certain positions and certain times of year in construction, like a position that is often under some pretty severe time constraints as estimators.
Right. It's hard to get to them. Yeah.
Hard to get to them during the day, that they don't have their boss in the next room or sitting next to them, or they aren't all sitting in a room together, and they can't take phone calls during the day, or they have a bid due in 3 days and there is not a single minute they have to breathe. So they could really want to talk. There are also ways that we can tell if somebody wants to continue that conversation. It's the calling them at work and the awkward, like, oh, yeah, I'm at work right now. Can you call me later? It's like, yep, you're around your boss right now? Okay, yep, you're a superintendent sitting in the truck with the owner. Gotcha. Sorry. Yes, I would love to talk to you. Yep. I'll shoot you a text message. Here's my cell phone number. We'll talk later. Yep. So an active candidate, a passive candidate, they're just because the word, the lip surface is there doesn't mean the intention isn't. Yep. So it's a lot of peeling back, but a really great question or a way to tell is the amount of time that they make or don't make to have that conversation. Yep. So that'd be one layer.
Yep. And that's really great advice for recruiters. And I'm also curious, more for the people on the other side of that phone call. What is some advice that you would give them? I think it's just really cool because you were that person in multiple seats, right? But what advice would you give that active job seeker as they consider making that change, whether their company knows that they're looking or not? Everybody has a right to look, right? We're not being ill, trying to steal people all around. That's not the point, right? But everyone should have the freedom to look for an opportunity that might be a better fit for them. So what would you say to those people that are in that active role, that are looking for something? What are some, like maybe 2 or 3 things that they should make sure they do as they're thinking about looking for a career change?
I try to always think about what it was like when I was considering making that move. And I had a recruiter saying, like, which companies would you consider working for? What type of opportunities would you be interested in? I don't know. I don't know. I always just worked, and I don't have a ton of time to sit around and think about the other things that I could be and should be doing. I just don't know what's beyond here. Yep. So for that person starting out in that search, I would encourage them to research companies that they have always found interesting. So there were always, even for me, if I wasn't ever really looking, there were like, I was always curious about this company. I always heard really great things about so-and-so company, or maybe even a certain market in a career change. But I would encourage them to get online and start looking up and researching companies that they are interested in. And oftentimes they start that research process and like, oh, I didn't realize this company only handled this, or their locations were here, scratch that.
Kind of killing the assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you've never looked, you don't know what that information is. So start by looking at the companies or types of opportunities that you're interested in. Now, for me also, when I was considering like, oh, do I make a career change, which I did, where do you even start with that? And so same thing, things that you always thought were interesting. I went to school for marketing, so I started researching marketing, and I went and looked up job descriptions for the positions I was interested in. So if you think that you want to be a marketing director, go and look up the job description for, just Google marketing director job description and look at them, or look at jobs for it and like, okay, this is what they're expected to do for travel. This is what the approximate pay is. Here are the requirements. And very quickly you can go from being, I have no idea what my next move is to, okay, I've looked at these 5 places. These are the ones that I want to continue with. So that would be for an active candidate that doesn't know where to start.
Yep.
Oftentimes a fresh graduate is in that boat.
Yep.
And then for an active candidate that wants to get out to as many places as possible, my suggestion would be organization. So for a recruiter, we want to make sure that we are being valuable to a company, and we're not giving you information you already have. So we don't want to, Mr. Johnson, we don't want to give his resume to the same 10 companies that already have his information. So if you're applying someplace, if you're applying to 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs, put that information in an Excel file or a Word or somewhere that you can go and say, these are the ones that I have pursued on my own. Or if you have talked to other recruiters, which, it happens often that we talk to somebody and they're already working with, multiple recruiters, or sometimes they've never even heard of a recruiter before. Just organize that information.
Yep.
Okay, on March, I put my application, or on March 15th, I put my application in. Here was my response, or I never heard from so-and-so company, or I applied here and back in 2017, but I never spoke with anybody. So being organized with where your information is going is the biggest key that I would say for anybody that we talk to, especially somebody that is more active on the market.
Yep. So, and really the 3 things that you listed are kind of making sure as a potential mover, like someone moving to or changing their, either jumping complete industries or just advancing in their career, looking for a different role somewhere else, is really just 3 things to kind of check your heart a little bit, or check your mind, to be like, what do you know? Like, what's true about the industry that you're looking in? What's true about the lifestyle of the work that you're thinking, the job description would help inform that. And then the other thing is maybe more, if you are going to work with a recruiter or not, to have maybe just not be so willy-nilly with the process, like throwing your oats to the wind or whatever. That's probably a bad reference, but throwing whatever to the wind and like, oh, I hope something sticks, instead being very intentional about your pursuit and organizing who you apply to, when you apply to them, who you've had conversations with, all that kind of stuff, right? It kind of like is like getting your house in order for hopefully the right opportunity to pop up.
So you exactly right that we try to be as strategic and intentional as possible. So there are companies, recruiting firms out there and candidates that works really well and it's very successful to toss out 100 resumes and see where it sticks, or send a resume into 100 different companies in the hopes that there might be something that works out with those pursuits.
Yep.
Now, what GPAC, prides ourselves on is it's strategic. It doesn't make sense for the companies to go through 100 resumes that aren't a fit. We are more intentional. So if you're looking for a certain location or type of work or growth opportunities, even salary information, all of that, we're going to be strategic about where your information goes. And something that I say to every candidate is you should have control over where your information is.
Yep.
So you would do that day to day if you're with your personal information, but sometimes you don't think twice about, your name, your phone number, and your email address and your personal information going out to 100 different locations.
Yep.
So being very strategic and organized with your information, and that you're in control of that and where it's going.
Yep. And I want to get to passive candidates as well, but I do have one more question for you. I'm curious, if you took your GPAC hat off for a second, and maybe this is more informed by your personal story, what is maybe one more thing that you would say to active job seekers related to getting ready for a change? So,
this might not be quite what you were looking for, but something that comes to mind and that I have, it's a part of every single conversation with any candidate that we speak to is, if they're already, especially a passive candidate, but when you are talking to a recruiter and we paint this picture of, this ideal job, and we go forward and we find you this great opportunity, everything lines up, the money's there, it's exactly what you're looking for. The company loves you, you love the company. And I thought about this because I went through it. Okay, now you have to tell your company that you work for 15 years or 3 months or, they're depending on you. Either way, nobody wants to lose an employee.
Yeah.
It's an investment and the training that goes through it.
Yep.
Nobody wants to lose somebody, even if it's, planning on being temporary. Sometimes we have somebody that they know they're only going to work there a couple years, but either way, it is hard going to a company and saying, hey, thank you for all those paychecks.
Right.
I'm going to get mine somewhere else now.
Yeah.
So when we talk to candidates, and I had this framed up in my mind of like, okay, you're going to put in your notice now. You're in GPAC. When you go through the training, we talk about this. You're going to be in an office or you're sitting down in a chair across the desk from your boss.
Yep.
You're going to go to tell them that you are putting in your notice.
Yep.
And truly think about what that's like. If my boss, her name was Stacy, and like sit across the desk from Stacy and tell her that you're not going to be working here anymore. And, don't put me on the schedule anymore. I'm gone. So, and the first time around when I wasn't ready, that was a sobering moment of, I cannot do that. I'm not ready for that. And we talk about peeling back those layers of intention and, how serious somebody is. Sometimes, you find out that is not what you're ready to do or what you want to do. Or sometimes in that conversation, you find out, best case scenario, they offer me the promotion that I've been passed up and they're going to stay where they're at.
Yep.
Best case scenario, they give me that $3,000 that I know that, Frank in the next department just got that raise for, and I'm frustrated and I've been, edgy at work because of it.
Yep.
So best case scenario, what happens? You go to put in your notice.
So in the passive market, it's a little bit different than the active sphere where those people have made a step. Whereas in the passive, they're not necessarily making those steps. But again, I think you talked early on about the recruiters in particular kind of being a catalyst for some conversations within, that was both. That was active and passive. But within the passive market, kind of being a catalyst for not just like, I think you kind of talked about the whole headhunting thing. Like, I think there's this perception that, they're out to try to like steal somebody from a company and move them somewhere else. And we talked about that. But, maybe appealing to the base human desire to always know what's possible or what's out there, I think is the opportunity that's presented a passive candidate. Meaning you may not know the place that you're really at until you see maybe 5 other companies like that or other opportunities like that. You may have no frame of reference for what it's like until you see another opportunity out there. And that you kind of said it earlier, that opportunity may reinforce why you are where you are, or it may make you ask some hard questions. Like, hey, would I consider making a change if I knew I could get this, this, and this? Or, hey, would I consider moving my family to our home state if I knew I could do blank, blank, and blank, right?
Well, oftentimes we use the term all the time here, especially when you're going through training here, and there's so many terms and things that you're trying to absorb, but you don't know what you don't know.
Sure.
So just this week, I was talking with my brother who recently changed jobs after 11 years.
Yep.
And it's still a job. I mean, if we weren't getting paid, we're probably not going to show up, right? It's a job for a reason. So there are things about every single job that are not, sitting at home or hanging out with your friends and family and doing nothing. Like it's a job.
There's no perfectly ideal role. Yep.
Even if it's like the best job, your dream job, it's still a job that you're going to because you need to make money, right?
Yep.
But sometimes you don't realize that some of these things you don't actually have to deal with. So you can have a job and still not have some of those problems at that job. So when I was talking with my brother this week, like, well, I didn't realize that what I was doing was I didn't realize it was so rare that people stuck around so long. And he went through this past week of getting phone calls from people that he's never talked to that had heard about him leaving his company. And he just kept saying it felt so good to know that I didn't have to stay there. I didn't have to stay in that environment, and I didn't have to deal with all those things. Like there are still, the same hours or slightly improved hours and the pay, whatever the pay might be, but we could be fixing some of those things that people didn't know could be better.
Yeah.
You mentioned even relocating. We talked to quite a few people that are looking to relocate, but we'll hear, well, I know that those jobs don't come up very often, or
Sure.
I know the pay is pretty low in that market. Like, actually, how would you know? Because you've been at the same company forever. Like, how are
Yeah.
you finding out this information unless you have a bunch of, friends or colleagues or old people that
Right.
you went
To know, learn from.
to school
Sure.
from or school with
Yeah.
that are living there, that you know exactly what they make. You don't really know what that situation is. So you don't know what you don't know. So I think
Yep.
it's always we were talking earlier about that catalyst for change. So I can't tell you how many times it happens where you talk to a candidate that you are targeting. They're working, they're happy, they're working there.
Yep.
They don't, they're not out calling you.
Yep.
Like, and I say
You
that
called
all the
them.
time, like,
Yep.
hey, I called you. I know you probably don't even have an updated resume
Sure.
because you weren't expecting my phone call, but I have this company that's interested in your background. They're located in so-and-so. And quite often the conversation is like, oh, that'd be great. When you have a good conversation, you have an idea of what you should keep in mind. Like, what should I be telling you about? What should I give you a call back about? Like, if I had something come up, like, what's a true timeline? I mean, is that something that I should call you back in like 6 months or in 3, 4, 5 years? Or, oh yeah. I mean, not something until I, 10 years down the road, do I even want to make that move? And then you have those calls. And it's a plan to follow up with them because it's a long game. Most often with passive candidates, it's a long game.
Because you talked about they're a little more flexible, right? Yep.
Flexible.
Yep.
It's something keep me in mind for because I know it doesn't come up very often. Tell me about when this position comes up. So you have that call. I can't tell you how often you get a phone call or a text message or an email a few days later like, hey, we were talking the other day and I was saying that I wasn't quite ready for, a few years down the road, but really started to think about our conversation and I saw so-and-so company is looking, or you had mentioned a position in so-and-so.
Yeah.
So it gets people start thinking like, oh, I didn't realize that was out there. I didn't know that it could be different or could be better, or I could get a job back in my hometown. So those conversations that you think and potentially could be just something to follow up on in a couple years or keep in contact with somebody could be that you get the phone call from them and it's like, we're getting them on interviews in the next week.
Yep. Do you, just maybe an aside here, but like, I tend to, maybe my past has shown that I tend to be a bit more of a grass is greener type person. I'm always like at least curious about opportunities that are out there. Like, kind of thinking of all the conversations that you have had with people, how many of those are people that maybe either just feel stuck, like they just don't feel like there is any more options, so they've never looked, or they are just genuinely happy and they're not interested or putting the energy into exploring what may else be out there? Like, what's the percentage of that versus the people that are always kind of like have an ear to the wind, is like what may be next?
Yeah. So we do talk to candidates that are at their job, and you're going to talk to them again in 6 months. And, when another search comes up in that area, and you're going to talk to that person again in another 3 months or a year down the line, and they're not actually ready to make that move. And they just kind of want to know what's out there, and you just want to know that you're wanted. But that's few and far between in my experience. I mean, we as, as a team, you get familiar with the same people like, oh, Frank over there, he was, I talked to him a few months ago and this is what he said. Like, I talked to him again and like, he's probably not going to make a move. He really loves it where he's at now, but he just wants to know that he is being taken care of. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So knowing what else is out there, I think is healthy. I think that's great. But the candidates that I personally, or that it seems that we connect with, are few and far between that are actually just want to know what's out there. Most of the time, it's because there is something that maybe they're not even ready to realize or ready to talk about that's going on, that is an issue or needs to be fixed. And often it's they're confidential. They're really worried about confidentiality and
kind of breaking
they
the
don't
fold.
They don't know you. I mean, you're a recruiter. Like, who are you? You haven't talked to them before, or why would they share that they have a toxic work environment where they're at, or they have a problem getting along with somebody else at their work? I mean, they are cautious for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to upset their current situation. And we say that all the time. Like, I'm not here to ruin relationships. I'm here to make them, make new ones, and preserve those existing ones. So
it kind of creates transparency in a way, right? And that's not a rap against companies, right? There are probably companies out there, unfortunately, that rule with fear. But oftentimes it's probably people, us as people, as employees, that are just too afraid to have that conversation with a boss that may readily have that conversation about a raise or a change, right? So there's often two things at play there, but I think the opportunity or the value, maybe the unseen value that recruiters bring to that is to kind of like, maybe this is too bold and you can correct me, but kind of like a checks and balances to that whole process of like, hey, creating transparency, and like you can have a confidential conversation with a recruiter about the things that you may be frustrated about. And in having that conversation, you might just get the confidence to have the conversation with your boss that you've needed to have. Or you might gain the confidence to actually look and see what else might be out there, right?
Sometimes hearing that something's not normal or not okay is all it takes to like, oh, I guess I thought it was typical that all, estimators or whatever worked 70 hours a week, or all estimators worked on Saturdays and Sundays. That's just what everybody in the company does.
Yeah.
So they might not even know that it's wrong or bad.
Yeah.
Or not that it's necessarily wrong, but that it's uncommon, or they don't have to deal with that. But you had mentioned kind of culture. We were talking about reputation a bit. Something on even the flip side that we get to work with both candidates and companies. Sometimes we're talking with companies about their reputation. Like, hey, I know you're looking for 2 or 3 positions, or we talked 6 months ago about this position. We found you somebody else. And sometimes it's us having that very real conversation with the company saying, what's going on with the leadership, or, tell me about your project manager that you have in place right now. It seems to be there, do you have any, what's the culture like there? And just opening up that door, because sometimes we're having those conversations with candidates that don't know that. Recently I had a situation where a candidate was interested in making a change, and there was a location of a company that was really close to their home. So they would love something closer to home, shorten up their commute. It's in the DC area, used to driving an hour and a half. And through talking with this candidate about companies in the area, like, I've heard so-and-so about this company. Okay, well, they know that was an issue. They actually, they let go of the VP. And
you can
now they're doing,
verify.
So we're helping in some scenarios where I wouldn't say helping repair, but kind of clearing up some concerns that somebody might have, or showing that they were making changes that had maybe people concerned about joining the company before. So sometimes we're a part of that process too. So
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really great on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's just that thing that as an outsider to recruiting is so cool to me about what's possible from the recruiter seat. Like of the value that you bring to that whole environment.
Well, it's just like an inside peek into what's going on, which is
for everyone
cool
to kind of verify what's real. Really, like kind of validate what's actually going on, not just getting in our little bubbles and environments and losing sight. You kind of give people perspective about what's true. Like it's awesome.
Pretty cool.
What would you say? Kind of the same thing I asked you with the active candidates. What would you say to a passive candidate? There's a little different, right? Because they may not be actively pursuing a change. But what would you say to them if they haven't considered a change, or if they would consider a change? What are some pieces of advice or things that they should really think about as they're thinking about that?
So statistically, everybody makes a job change. I think it's like 3 times in their life or something. There's a stat out there that most people make a change. So even when you talk to somebody that's like been at a company for 16 years, like, I don't know, I've always just done this. This is how it is. Most people make a change.
At least one.
For a reason. And again, not often at a fault of a company or something that somebody's doing wrong, or a candidate or a company. So talking with passive candidates, it's a paint me a picture. So what could be different? Okay, so you love your boss.
Yeah.
That's great. But what if you could make that ideal job? Like, you paint me a picture of what that looks like. What else could be different? And it's not necessarily that things are bad where you're at. Maybe you love what you're doing, but you've always had an interest in. So with construction, there's the developer side, and there's often candidates that are very happy at their job working for a construction or a general contractor. But they've always had an interest in this developer side or this
Yeah.
owner side. And that's often of like, I'm really, really happy where I'm at. Nothing can be changed, but my current company doesn't do this type of work or this type of construction. And that's what I'd be interested in. But that's not going to be offered up on an initial conversation
Yeah.
because they're loyal. They're happy
Yep.
where they're at. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing the company can do to fix any of those things. So
Yep.
advice for a passive candidate, I always try to say we're never going to fix something that's not broken. So I wouldn't try to put seeds in somebody's mind if they're really day to day. There's not really
Yeah.
anything that bothers them,
Yep.
or
If it ain't
that
broke,
they
don't fix it.
yeah, they
kinda
don't
thing.
go
Yep.
home and complain about something. I'm not going to say, hey, but have you ever thought about
Sure.
this? Like,
Yeah.
you should be mad about that. But often bringing up the location,
Yep.
that's something we get with passive candidates that are really happy where they're at, but oh, I see you got your degree from Ohio State. Have you ever thought about moving back
Moving
home,
back.
or do you still have family there? Or like, why did you went to school in New Jersey, but you're living in Florida now? Like, what caused that change? So peeling back some of the layers of their personal life of behind the change that you can see just on their timeline
Yep.
of their life. Like, you went to high school here, you graduated here, and now you're here. You've lived in 20 different places with this company. Like, where's home? What does home look like for you? Where is that location? So passive candidates, it's often peeling back a lot of layers because they're happy where they're at.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
a small fix.
Yep. So really, your advice to passive candidates would be, well, you kind of said that paint the picture, which really is kind of like, hey, just consider what's possible, or think for a minute about what you would really like. Maybe that's now, or maybe that's in 5 years, and be aware that those things are possible. Like, kind of open the mind up a little bit. Don't get too stuck in where you're at, and say like, hey, in 5 years, there could very well be an opportunity for you to move to Tallahassee or to North Dakota or wherever you want to be. That could very much be a possibility. Stay open to it.
Especially in this industry, we get to find out information about companies and where they're headed or changes that they're making in the future before anybody else does. So
Yeah,
before
so you kinda know
the
what's coming.
public knows, yeah, there's, for example, of what even is happening in Sioux Falls. I mean, the fact that the Amazon distribution center,
Yep.
that massive project and all the jobs there, there are some people that knew about that change before the public. So
Sure.
sometimes we know about that, like, oh, there's no way a job would open up again in my hometown of Sioux Falls
You're like, hey, wait a second.
in this position.
Yep.
Like, next year we know about this project coming up. So sometimes that paint the picture of, I'll never find that doesn't exist, that's not out there. Well, it is. In about 6 months, I know about this position, and here's about the pay range of what they're looking at, and here's what they're looking for. So the paint the picture is really, I don't think that really is out there, or I know the money's not there because it's a smaller market. So it's what if you didn't know anything more than what you know now?
Yeah.
What would you dream up?
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So really, like, just in summary, kind of our conversation, like for an active candidate, you said, research, the kinds of companies that you appreciate or know about. Research the job that you want so you understand it, and really like be organized in your whole process of job seeking. And then for the passive candidate, really is, again, just kind of keep
An open mind.
keep an open mind. Sure.
Yeah.
And then really the little nugget that you slipped in between those two was to companies, which was more or less, don't be afraid of people being aware of opportunities around them, because it might either validate
Mhm.
their experience that they're in a really great spot, or if you welcome the feedback that's created from that conversation, you might have an opportunity to grow and change as a company, and not just keep that person, but become a better place to work.
And if we look at these candidates as the people that they are, if you knew that your employee could have this great opportunity and it's not something available at your company, wouldn't you want that for them anyway?
Yeah.
Best case scenario, they're going to find that dream job, even if it doesn't exist at your company. You want what's really great for them. So it's might be bittersweet, but you know what's actually right. So sometimes it's knowing what is going on in the market and what people are asking for also. So that some of that feedback is, we've had a lot of that lately through this past year. And I would say the remote work, that conversation has been increasing for the past few years, even prior to COVID, of, I'd love to be able to work remotely part-time, or I wish there was an option for me to work, a couple days a week from home and some days from the office. And that this past year forced some of those conversations, but we are able to have that that feedback for companies prior to this of saying, hey, this is why your people are looking, or these are the things that they're asking us for, is I want this flexibility, or I want, these benefits are in really high demand right now, or you don't have a 401k.
Sure.
That's big right now.
Yeah.
If you're targeting somebody that's in between 20 and 30, early career, or somebody fresh out of school, you got to figure out how to make it happen for a 401k plan, because that's really important to fresh graduates right now. So some of that feedback of why people are looking or having those conversations with recruiters could change some of the things, so companies can maybe address or become
pivot.
aware. Pivot. Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's finish the day with thank you again. This has been an awesome conversation.
This is fun.
Let's finish with a little rapid fire. So I've got about 5 questions ready for you, knowing a little bit about you.
Oh.
But you don't have much time to answer. You just got to answer on the spot.
Okay.
And I'll kind of finish it with a take home. So you ready?
Possibly.
Rapid fire. All right. Question number 1. If you could go to one live show this year, what would it be?
Ben Harper.
Ben Harper. Good choice. Question number 2. What would be your pick-me-up drink of choice?
Oh, any kind of drink. I'd say probably a gin and tonic, or maybe a Spark energy drink.
Okay. Question number 3. What is one way that you want to grow as a recruiter this year?
Ooh. I would like to take some of those moments, the down, maybe some of those valleys, not the peaks. Like the peaks are, everything's great, but you can learn still when you're on a peak, but the valleys, like what could have I done differently 3 months ago, 1 month ago, 2 weeks ago, to change how deep my valley is right now.
Yep. Question number 4, what is the most productive part of your day?
Okay. Morning for sure. I think a little bit of the overwhelming sensation of having a bunch of things to do in the morning, and just like go, lots of things to do, a very short amount of time. So probably morning.
Awesome. Yeah. Last question. This is kind of the thing I want you to leave people with. You said people make an average of 3 changes?
I believe so. I mean, that's a rough quote, but
statistics are statistics.
Yeah,
somewhere between 1 to 3 changes in their lifetime. Everybody makes a change. What's one piece of encouragement you would give the average person out there in light of that?
Life is so short that it doesn't have to be hard every day. So even if it's job, it can be better, or life doesn't have to be a struggle. Like it can get better, and it can wake you up, or get you out of bed. There are opportunities out there that you can get excited about. So it's out there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
You did it.
Thank
Rapid
you.
fire's over.
That's fun.
Again, thank you for joining us for the episode. If you love what you hear, we're going to have way more conversations like this with awesome people like Samantha Solomon, learning more about that intersection of candidates, companies, and recruiting, and all the really cool insight gained at that intersection. If you're watching, thank you for watching. Head over to gogpac.com/knowledge center. There's a ton of other really awesome resources out there, articles, other things that we put together to really help you win at the corporate game. We'll see you next episode.